by the way. And on April night in '85, that's the best fight I've ever seen. Hagler and Hearns. And he says hello. Alex, it's good to have you with us. I hate the moment with Marvin, but it's great to have you aboard. How are you today, okay?
Yeah, nice to be with you. Yeah, I found out about the Marvin Hagler dying just minutes before we were getting ready to do our Showtime broadcast on Saturday night, and it was jarring. Of course, we did a little bit of a tribute to Marvin Hagler, what we could, with only a short time to get ready for it. But yeah, it was a very difficult moment for everyone.
All right, we got a lot to discuss. Let's get the big topic out of the way first. It's the best 9 minutes of boxing or 8 minutes of boxing I've ever seen. They basically killed each other for 8 minutes in '85. You were behind the microphone that night. Everybody kind of knew they didn't like each other. They promoted it with the emblem war on their hats, so they kind of knew what they were in for. But boy, did they give America a hell of a sports night. Al, let's talk about that first. Go ahead. Let me hear.
Well, that was an extraordinary night. You know, we all thought that was going to be an amazing match, but no one could have expected it to be quite as dramatic as it was. The atmosphere out at that, from being present at those fights, the atmosphere at that outdoor stadium, outdoor setup at Caesar's Palace lent itself to some extraordinary moments, and the crowd that night, I remember thinking the crowd was actually a little subdued, and then as the fight got closer and closer, you could feel the excitement rise, and by the time they got in the ring, it was palpable, and of course they raised it exponentially with what they did. And I think the pace of that fight was set at first by Hagler, who came after Tommy Hearns, caught a huge right hand from Hearns that kind of damaged Tommy's right hand a little bit, but hurt Marvin Hagler. And I think that spurred Hagler on to say, I need to do my best to get Tommy Hearns out of here because this guy can punch. And that produced probably the best, and we said it on the broadcast, the best first round or the best round of middleweight boxing in history.
Yeah, an incredible 8 minutes, and Hagler got cut all over him, and he hung in there, and he hung in there, and he hung in there. Did he get a raw deal when he fought Ernst Infermo there in '79? When he fought to a draw, did he get a raw deal in that fight? I don't remember that fight. I remember the fight.
The Vito Infermo fight?
Yeah, did he get a raw deal in that first fight?
It remains one of the worst decisions in boxing history. There's no conceivable way that fight was a draw. It was as bad as any decision I've ever seen in my life. It was atrocious. And let me say this. Throughout his career, Marvin Hagler was not treated that well by judges in boxing. That fight was an example, of course. His fight with Roberto Duran, which was up for grabs toward the end, there's no way that fight was that. Well, I don't think he dominated Duran as much as people thought he was going to. It was shocking that it was that close. His fight with John Mugabe was amazingly very close when he stopped Mugabe, and that was shocking. And then, of course, many people will suggest that at least one of the scorecards in the Leonard fight was insane. There often was issues that Hagler had for some reason. The judges weren't always as kind to him as they should have been.
Yeah, let's do the Leonard fight. Al Bernstein on Marvin Hagler, the great middleweight, passed away in New Hampshire over the weekend. Al just told you he was getting ready for Showtime. I don't recall I remember there was a lot of controversy. For some reason, I didn't go see that fight. I don't know why, but there was a lot of controversy. And Hagler left a bitter man, never fought again after he lost on the cards. Did he get I know Leonard was a master at staying out of trouble. Did Marvin get a raw deal that night? Did he win that fight? Did Hagler?
It was a pretty close fight. And you can make the case, I guess, I thought Hagler won by a point or two, by 2 points. I guess you'd have to make him. He probably won that fight 7 rounds to 5, in my opinion. But that means it's a very close fight. Part of the problem was that one of the judges, Jojo Guerra, scored at 118-111 for Leonard, and that, so that really set people off. It was very close, and But Marvin Hagler said he felt he won, and he felt that there was no point in him fighting anymore. He was probably older than the reported age that they had for him at that time, and he'd had a really lengthy career, and he felt he was at peace with himself because he felt he had done what he needed to do, and if they didn't recognize it, so be it.
I always thought, I know the argument at the time, Al, is that, it was Hagler's championship, and if you want to wrestle the championship away from him, you got to knock him out, or at least dominate the fight from that standpoint. Now, Leonard is Leonard. We understand he's an all-time great, but he didn't do anything to really hurt Hagler that night, and that is why Marvin felt that he got gypped. Is there some truth to that?
Well, yeah, I don't know. I don't subscribe to the theory that you have to knock a champion out. You have to win rounds. And Hagler did aid Leonard's case by fighting the first 3 rounds as a right-hander, which and Hagler could switch to righty and did it occasionally and did it effectively. But he fought the whole first 3 rounds as a righty. And I think he admitted later that his theory was he wanted to outbox Leonard, and that he thought that would be even more dramatic to show he could outbox the boxer. He then switched gears after the first 4 or 5 rounds of that fight and did more attacking. But he may have given away early rounds that that didn't help him. But I thought ultimately he won the fight, but I don't know that you can call Leonard winning a robbery. But clearly that was a surprise to many people.
All right. How much credit? I guess we got to give plenty of them. The Petronelli brothers, who became his trainers and his managers and found him in Broxton, Mass. There in the mid-70s. We give them an incredible amount of credit for seeing what they had and making him that kind of player. I mean, listen, they make him a fighter, but they developed this.
Here's the thing about their relationship that's so special. There was tremendous loyalty, two-way loyalty. And, of course, one of the most famous stories that's been repeated is that at a certain point, the Petronellis, when Marvin Hagler was making, 7 figures for fights, and they suggested to him that maybe they should get a flat fee as opposed to a percentage, to make it fairer to Marvin Hagler. And he was adamant that was not going to happen. He said, you're going to get your percentage the way we started out, and you've earned it, and don't discuss this again or I will fire you. So, that to me showed, number one, the kind of man Marvin Hagler was, and he was an incredibly straight shooter, and it showed the kind of relationship that they had with each other. So, and they understood enough to, allow Marvin Hagler to, they were good boxing trainers, but they understood to make sure that Marvin Hagler was allowed to do things the way he wanted to do it. So they would say to him and make suggestions and things when necessary.
Wow, fascinating. I didn't know that about the percentage argument. Well done with Al. Came from Newark, New Jersey. Left during the riots in the late 60s. Father left. He came from a very tough background. So, he dropped out of school at 15 now. So boxing saved, in a lot of ways, Marvin Hagler. Is that correct?
Yeah, boxing became his the one line that's funny. He said, if you cut open my cranium, inside you'll see a boxing glove. So I am boxing. And it became his life. And when I made some statements on the Showtime show Saturday night, I said that the hallmark of him is his consistency. He fought in one weight division his whole career, had one set of trainer managers, the Petronellis, for his whole career, and his approach to boxing never changed. He was as dedicated from the first time he laced on a pair of gloves to the last time he laced on a pair of gloves. So some of that is born from the fact that he understands what a role boxing played in his life, and he always wanted to give it its just due. And I can't imagine any boxer in the history of the sport that gave as much respect to the sport of boxing and did it justice the way Marvin Hagler did. I mean, truly extraordinary. And you were talking about the Tommy Hearns fight. a sidelight to that is I'm a guy that almost derailed the Tommy Hearns fight, although it wasn't really my fault. We were getting in the ring to do an interview for the pay-per-view of it, and Marvin, we were stepping up the ladder, and I was stepping up there, and Marvin got on right after me, and we must have clipped our legs or something, and we both started going over after about the third step. And we're grabbing each other in the ropes, and we barely averted having both of us fall to the floor. And the only thing going through my head was, I was pretty early in my broadcasting career. I'd only been on national TV for 5 years. This was, a huge opportunity. And I thought, okay, this is great. I'm going to be the one that destroys the Hagler-Hearns fight. Luckily, we didn't topple down.
Thank goodness. A pro's pro is the best way to explain Hagler. A great fighter and a pro's pro. How about that, Al? You like that or no?
Yeah, I think that's pretty accurate.
All right. Now, he leaves after the Leonard fight. I'm sure he was enticed to come back for a huge payday. Decides to go to Italy to make movies. Thoughts on that? Let me hear. Go ahead.
Yeah, he enjoyed Italy. It's always, he had a love affair with the country. And I went over and did some movies, and he was always the tough guy in the movies, and he enjoyed it. And he and his wife, Kay, who's Italian, they had a wonderful life over there. And he would return to the United States for big events like Boxing Hall of Fame celebrations, sometimes for big boxing matches, and had a home in New Hampshire, which is apparently where he was when he passed away. And so he carved out for himself a very good life. He had economic stability because of his earnings in the sport of boxing and the fact that he took care of that money extremely well. So Marvin Hagler, in a lot of ways, is a success story in boxing in ways that we don't always see success. Oftentimes, like other athletes and other entertainers and people, boxers that make a lot of money don't always, retain it as well as we would like.
Well, here's a great quote in today's obit in the Times, Richard Goldstein, and this sums up what you just said. He made $40 million in purses in his career. I saw Joe Louis at the door at Caesar's Palace just shaking hands, and that left a bad taste in my mouth, he told SI. Then I saw Jersey Joe Walcott doing the same thing in Atlantic City. Great champions. That keeps me moving. There you go. Perfect example, right? Came from a poor background.
I think those stories are apt because and the other thing is, discipline was the hallmark of Marvin Hagler. And that's why I mentioned same weight division, same approach to sport. So the discipline he had within the sport also was a benchmark for him outside the sport. So it's not shocking that a person that's so disciplined would also handle his other affairs with great discipline.
Do you want to put the Hagler-Hearns fight as one of the top 7 or 8 fights of all time, or I haven't rated too high?
No, I think it could very well be. It's the second best fight that I ever announced, believe it or not. Probably number one is Diego Corrales against Jose Luis Castillo in 2005, which is the greatest lightweight championship match ever. But you can make a case for it as the top 7 or 8. Because of several things. Number one, it was so exciting. Number two, the moment itself. It was an important fight. And also because there were two superstars. The Four Kings in the 1980s was probably the best decade boxing's had, maybe ever, but certainly for most of its existence. And the Four Kings were a big part of that. The major part of it. Marvin Hagler, Roberto Duran, Tommy Hearns, and Sugar Ray Leonard. So fights involving those four men took on mythical proportions.
Yeah, boxing lost a big star. I hated to see that. I was stunned too. He's one of those guys out. The way he took care of himself and how strong. You thought he'd live forever. That's the last thing.
Yeah, that's the thing. I spent a lot of time around Marvin Hagler in the last 10 or 15. Well, a lot of time around him. I announced many of his fights, and afterwards have spent a lot of time around him at different events. The last time I saw him was at Nevada Boxing Hall of Fame event. He sat at the same table with me and my sister, who manages my affairs and is involved in everything. And they talked for like 25 minutes together. And I turned over and I said, "Wow, you guys are having a great discussion." And Marvin Hagler said, "Yeah, your sister knows boxing pretty well." You know, he was that kind of guy. And he's just the kind of person that you want to be around. You know, he has there's a demeanor about him that is just, it's honest, and you feel that there's an authenticity to him. And I just going to miss him as a person, I treasure the times I was able to be around him, and they were a lot, and he'll be missed.
He was great fighter, great night, great career. Well done, Al. Thanks for a couple. Keep up the good work. We'll keep on watching Showtime. You got it. Al Bernstein, well done there on Marvin Hagler.